gonna help. So it needs to come up here and be down here. So the first time you do it, it's better to do it when they're standing there, so that we can be like, this is how long your arm is, or this, or this, or this, so that we have an idea. And then after that, you can, like, you just have, yeah, you can ad-lib it a little bit, but it's good to measure them so that way you kind of know what you're doing. So let's see, I haven't tipped you yet. So here and about here. So I would make hers about this long. And so what you do is you're gonna take your tape and you're gonna lay them out and overlap, because we've learned, right, that you take your tape and you overlap it by half every single time.
Yes.
And you want it to be pretty flat. And to be honest, this is what I do.
Just show us your ways.
Okay.
And don't do textbook. Just how do you do it?
Because you got to keep into account, like, ish how long their arm is, right? And then how thick their arm is. So I'm going to overlap that one because that one is kind of short. But the thing about it you have to remember is it needs to be wider than their arm is, because when we cut the eye, the top part of the eye is going to have to wrap around part of their bicep. So it needs to be wider than their arm is if you just look at it from like an anterior position. Yeah? Okay. Also not long enough. But I'm bum.
She gets me.
Okay. Meh.
Here's my needy arm.
So then, when you're gonna pick this up, why am I gonna pick it up from this side?
That's where you started, and it's gonna take it all.
Yeah, it'll take, if I start from that side, I'm just gonna take like the top off and the top off and the top off, and it's not gonna work out so good. So you come from this side, and now you have a strip, right, of what you need. So then what you're going to do is you're gonna take your scissors and you're gonna make the eye. So you are going to cut in, and remember, it's easier to cut multiple times than to cut one huge one and then be like, shit, I overcut that. So you're gonna cut in on the right and on the left. And you want them to be pretty even. If they're not like identical, I mean, it's not a failed tape job, but you want it to be as close as you possibly can.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how deep do you cut it?
So I'm going to show you in just a second. So eventually I'm going to fold this over, but since this is the first time I've ever put one on her, I want to see like if this covers the anterior part of her arm correctly. So I would have her come like this, and I would be like, okay, did I make it long enough? I did. Does this cover the anterior part of her arm? It's maybe a little bit too long still, or too thick. So I'm gonna cut it down a little bit more, so that way it's a little bit more narrow, because I don't want the front part wrapping all the way around her elbow. Like, that's not the point of it. It should span her anterior elbow, but not wrap around her anterior elbow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then you just lay this part down. So then this part isn't going to stick. You don't want the middle part to stick, okay? Because this is your spanning part. So then, but this part needs to be sticky, and this part needs to be sticky, because this is what you're going to stick to her forearm into her arm, right? So then you would spray it really good, okay? And so again, what are we trying to prevent?
Hyperextension.
Hyperextension. So again, it has to be below her muscle belly and at least partially above her muscle belly. But I can't put that whole thing above it, right? Like some people's biceps come super high. So we need to be like kind of within the region. Again, I'm going to tape the anchors to her skin, but it is too painful to put this like completely to their skin. So I wrap all the way up, and then I just leave a little place where I can have an anchor. And for this guy down here, I'm just gonna go straight on and put my regular old anchor. And I can put more than one if I want to. And when I'm gonna be up here, I'm gonna tell her to flex as hard as she can and press us. Yeah, do it.
Flex.
Because if she's not flexed when I do this, and then she flexes later, it is going to hurt like a banshee because I'm gonna start cutting off her circulation, and it's gonna be really, really uncomfortable for her as she's gonna be wearing this tape job.
Pump it up.
That looks so cool.
So when we do this, and I'm gonna show you, I made this long on purpose, so that way I can show you guys how to fix this stuff. So if we're gonna prevent hyperextension, what position does her arm need to be in?
Flex.
Extended.
Flexion.
If we're gonna prevent hyperextension,
Extended.
we need to tape her arm in.
Flex position.
Wait, okay. You
Extension.
don't want her.
And like the,
We're gonna prevent hyperextension.
yeah.
Shouldn't we have her?
So right
we need
before
to
it
have her a little flex.
We need to be flexed, because if I taper an extension, she's already going to be an
Yeah.
extension, so it'll be easier, it'll be harder for me to prevent that. Do I need her all the way like this?
No.
Like a slight.
No, but I do need her in at least a flexed position, because again, the tape isn't going to stay solid the whole entire time, right? Like it's gonna break down. So if I put this here and here, notice it's gonna be like all up in her armpit and stuff. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can cut them off, or you can fold them over a little bit, so that way it's here. And I usually start up here first. Instead of pulling her forearm up, I start here and then I anchor this down. Now there's different ways that you can anchor it. I usually want at least one of these guys, and I would try to cover all of that so that way it doesn't rip your shirt off and stuff. And then once I feel like she's in a good place and I'd be like, okay, this is a position we want, then I'm gonna pull this tight. Ooh, I'm gonna separate my tape jobs. And then as I do this, then I'd say, okay, pull. And I would just kind of put this on lightly and say, okay, now try to straighten your arm. And if it prevents her from straightening it, then it's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we're here. And then we would wrap around and give her an anchor. And then this is super awkward to just have it sit like that.
Mhm.
So you take
Power flex.
Yep. And you wrap over the whole entire thing, so that way, and do you have to go right over the elbow? You don't. And I would actually recommend you not go right over the elbow, so that way they have a space back here, because when they're flexing and stuff, then it works a little bit better. And again, you can ask them to flex, so that way this doesn't get too tight. But again, notice I am not pulling, guys. This is just like a covering wrap. This is not meant to be tight at all. This is just to make it, it's kind of like a
Swing.
like a
Like a
sheath
cast.
that we have on there, right? So
Yeah.
that way it's not moving. And then we just do a finishing wrap and maybe one down here, and then
Dang.
tell her to straighten it.
Wow. I feel like that's what Venus Williams tape job was one time.
Could be, yeah. And to be honest, the way that I did this with, so how I only did the tape going one way,
Uh-huh.
I always put another layer of tape going the opposite way. Do you know what I'm saying? But, and I guess I could have shown that to you, but
Like on the eye?
on the
itself?
eye. So it's not just going up and down. The way that I normally do it is I lay it all the way down and then I go across the opposite way. So, but I don't alternate them. I go all the way vertical and then I go across. And then if you need to, you can cut off the sides so that way it's a little bit flatter and even. But that gives them extra stuff. And the bigger the person is, for Mel, no offense, that one way, just going the one way might be enough. But if you're talking about, again, like an offensive or defensive lineman or a really big linebacker or somebody, if they fall, this isn't going to prevent them, like one strip isn't going to prevent them from hyperextending. So going vertical and horizontal might be necessary, and sometimes maybe even more than one of each direction might be necessary to prevent them. But for her, I think just one might be better. But you saw how it kind of like separated when I did that, so it just gives it greater stability and strength when you do that.
Would your anchors be like tightish, kind of? Because I feel like it wants
Yeah.
to like rip.
And it can. So I